typically keep the introduction of the guest to the end of the episode. And there's a rationale
Right.
behind it. Because I believe that a person's words sort of speak more than their identity. And I really want to sort of let people understand your thoughts and what we have to talk about, and then sort of focus like, okay, who said what? Because we have a tendency to always sort of like eventually focus too much on the who and not on the what of the subject. So we'll come to,
Absolutely.
who you are and everything that you've been up to in the end. But yes, um, we want to talk about startups and how that in itself, and I stole that line from you the previous time that we chatted, that startups can be quite a taboo subject in Mauritius. I just right up go and ask you, why do you think so?
Um, so it's a taboo. It's not a taboo anymore. I mean, I think it's basically getting better by the day. But it used to be a taboo in terms. I mean, startup existed since forever in Mauritius, right? So people doing small businesses. It doesn't. I mean, it doesn't have to be sort of techie. It doesn't have to be with huge organization, marketing or something. I mean, people start a small business as a startup as long as they actually carry on and transform into a company and whatever, right? But the terminology startup is more like adaptable to the new era, which comes with the digital sort of assets or a bit more e-coms, a bit more modern approach really. But the aspect of actually starting a business has been in Mauritius forever. Now, how people actually adapt with startup in Mauritius is slightly different to how other countries do it, maybe. And I suppose it's just a matter of adaptation to the infrastructure that we currently have in place in Mauritius. And of course, you will try to make sure that you adapt to your market as well. There's also that to consider. Um, and to answer to your question, it's not so much a taboo. It's just basically people are more reluctant, or they have more confidence in working for the 9 to 5. They, as a new, when you finish a university or you finish school, a secondary school or something, the first thing you do is look for a job. Where would you look for a job? What we normally describe as gouvernement, or un travail de gouvernement, right? Because it's safe, it's a 9 to 5, you do your job, you come back home. Or people will actually prefer to look for a job in big companies, which I won't name any, but what we call blue chip in Mauritius. Again, for the feel of safety. Um, Going forward, taking that step forward into setting up startup, rely on having capital, resources, of course, your idea, which I'm sure a lot of people got really good ideas, but the backup of the financial backup is very crucial. Whether a lot of people actually do have this infrastructure, not sure. Whether actually banks were very adaptable to actually giving finances in the past for startups, as they might come up as very how do I say that? Very what's the
Lucrative,
word?
profitable.
Yeah, so it's a risk. It's a risk for them. They're very risky. So people do they do does huge bank emotions trust these startups? Um, it's a question. I'm not saying yes or no. I'm not answering on behalf. But all that has an impact of being a taboo in Mauritius. I don't think the idea of startup being a taboo is should be described as a taboo. I think there's a lot of factors to consider. A startup doesn't actually come, startup is just not an idea of a business of whatever you'd like to do, or of a dream thing that, or dreams of a project you'd like to do. But it comes back with a lot of assets. It comes back with a lot of concept, impact, and influence. So whether we have that infrastructure in place in Mauritius, that's the bigger that's the bigger debate for me. So yeah.
And just for the sake of sort of bringing clarity to, the Mauritian audience that would be tuning in, we sort of have this concept that's called petite et moyenne entreprise in Mauritius, right? Like the SMEs.
Hmm. Yes.
Just for the sake of bringing a little bit of that distinction, is there really a difference between a startup and an SME, you reckon?
Well, so you have to basically establish different segment of where do you situate yourself into a startup. I think an SME and medium enterprise is probably be the same, almost the same thing, but not from a financial point of view. I think I know in the UK a lot of companies who are generating millions also still consider them as startups. What do you define startup? Is a very interesting subject. Um, so again, go back to your question. I think uh, they have to categorize those type of businesses based on revenue type. I think, or I think that's what they base it on. At least I don't know that much. I don't have that much experience in that sense, but that's what I would actually think of. It would be so based on your revenue, you're categorizing to being a small enterprise or medium enterprise.
Right.
Uh,
And
as a
like,
concept, as a concept,
yeah.
they're all startups. Yeah, sorry.
No, no, that's all good. And it's just that as you were talking, I was just sort of thinking about, the Mauritian startup landscape. And if you ask me, I feel that the startup culture in Mauritius is booming. It's really sort of pulsating with a particular energy. There's so many expats living their home countries to start ventures on the island. Um, but at the same time, even if it also happens from a local perspective, I'm
Hmm.
not really sure how much of a popular idea it is to just sort of go out and create your own little startup. And that's not to say that small businesses in themselves could not possibly be considered as a startup of their own, right? Like it brings us back to the definition of what a startup is. But when we talk about the Mauritian context for starting up, a lot of foreigners seem to see Mauritius as a very good opportunity for headroom in terms of growth and also in
Hmm.
terms of just the infrastructure that's provided, from being a tax haven to the different sort of subsidies given to you. Um, do you feel a bit saddened by the fact that locals themselves, ourselves, we're not sort of exploiting that a bit more? What do you think about that whole story sort of weaving itself today?
Yeah. I think this is something I've personally experienced. When you live on the island, you don't actually appreciate the opportunities that you have. Again, I'm talking for myself. Um, um, a good example was I've been living in Mauritius for nearly 20 years. Um, I've never actually really made the most of the seaside, the landscape. I used to go out, with a lot of friends and everything. But what I'm trying to tell you is sometimes when you're in the space, you're surrounded by a society where you don't actually necessarily see the opportunities. So it's an issue. But I'm not saying that I'm not saying it's for everyone. And also the other impact, why you get more and more expats or other people, investors, or other countries investing in Mauritius because they've adapted this successful business in their country, or in my example, I've experienced a lot of different businesses, knowledge. I've worked in a lot of companies, tech companies. I've worked with a lot of different type of companies. So I see there's a huge opportunity bringing that um, bringing that experience in Mauritius because there's a lack of experience. There's a lack of good experience in terms of digital businesses, digital assets, e-commerce, and everything in Mauritius. Because I see Mauritius as a very good a good opportunity, and it has good infrastructures. People can be adaptable. People are very welcoming. People are a bit more engaging towards new ideas. But that could be the reason why the idea actually is not actually booming or starting, initiating right from Russia, is because you might be surrounded by something that you don't see, and you have to basically step out of the box to see the opportunity. And I think that is my experience. Me being in the UK, working with different tech companies, having that huge exposure of maybe other people haven't had the chance to experience, actually has contributed to why I've also created Ticketbox in Mauritius. For me, Ticketbox.mu is not just a booking platform, it's an experience. I want to improve people's experience in booking online. It's not just simply running a business for me. I'm all about that user centric approach, um, and I see there's a huge opportunity to actually improve that society, and this is one tads. I don't know what you feel about that. How you feel
No,
about
no,
that?
entirely. And I'm so glad. I was about to bring up the word, and you so rightly mentioned it. It is a matter of exposure, because very much so. It's almost that you cannot sort of even think about doing something if you don't have an ideation happening in your mind. And ideation, and even the possibility to think about an idea, or like think about a possibility, has to do with you being exposed to so many differences that is not the normal or the typical trajectory of what everybody else around you is doing. And I'm so glad that you brought up Ticketbox.mu, because I really wanted you to sort of, like, tell us a bit more about it, how it started for you, and what caused you to exactly go into starting up. And I think in that itself, that story, um, for me, it's a very inspirational story, right? But I really want you to sort of tell us about how it all began, and where are you at right now, and what's your state of
Yeah,
mind with regards to your startup.
absolutely. Just to add to your previous point, I think people in Mauritius generally has a lot of good ideas. I've met a lot of people, a lot of younger generation who really come up with good ideas, very innovative ideas, but they don't have the know-how or the idea of what is the next step. Having an idea is not just enough. You need to know a different aspect of it as well. So how to, you could have a good idea, but you don't know how to run a business. Or you could have a good idea, but you don't have any financial backup. You could have a good idea, but you don't know how to actually put your, business together, whether it's an e-commerce, it's a platform. So all that actually adds up. So what happened is people has a good idea and then it just die because they don't know. There's no again. It goes back to the infrastructure in Mauritius. Maybe we should have a society or maybe an organization that actually help you build your startup. Like in the UK, you have obviously you have Google Entrepreneur that you can join. There's so many societies that actually you can join for free um, to help yourself meet people likewise to basically build a startup should you wish, share your idea, how you go about it, what's the next step, etc. Maybe that's lacking in Mauritius. But I don't know if I'm not sure if there is, but if there is, it's good. Keep it going. I think we need to do more. If it does exist, then we should I think appreciate and get started with those. meetups.
Sure. But I
Um,
do have something to add with regards to that, but I'll let you tell us about Ticketbox.mu first.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, so just to sum up, I'm not going to go into the long story, um, but Ticketbox started in 2018. Why it started is because of a lack of experience uh, for one of my gig that I organized in Mauritius. So I organized the first concert in Mauritius, well, in 2018. Um, so beginning of February 2018, where I did the concert with an artist called Vidya Vox from the US. She's very recognized, and I'm sure people will still remember that concert because it was one of a kind. Um, I put a lot of effort into the marketing. It was my first gig in Mauritius, never done a gig before. I've got experience and exposure in the UK, but again, like I said, Mauritian market is very different. So there was a challenge. So I had to basically look for a company to sell tickets online and sell tickets, generally for the gig. And I'm not going to mention that company, but you probably know which company I'm talking about. Um, and I went to them and I said, well, look, I've got this gig. I need to sell tickets. All good. They helped me out to start selling tickets, setting up my event and everything. Um, but then later on, I realized that I have been doing all the digital work, all the promotion, everything. So all I've done is feeding customers to them, and all they needed to do was, converting them. Um, just basically having a platform in me to purchase ticket. And then at the end of the project, I actually told them that I don't think the experience I had with your company was great because you promised that you are not just a ticketing platform, but you actually promote events in Mauritius, which you haven't done because all the promotion was done by myself and the team, obviously, my team, um, who was working with me on this project. But I don't think you've done much. You were just basically a mean to selling tickets. Uh, and bluntly, they said, well, if you're not happy, go and create your own platform or create your own company. Well, I didn't take it so bad. I took it up as a challenge, and I actually drove back home on that particular day, thinking it might not be the worst idea. I mean, look at the situation we're in. You do a concert, you do an event, you have to turn up to that only company to sell your events, and they must be taking the liberty of thinking that they are the best, they are the only one, or they might be. I mean, there was a couple of more, and there was a couple more of the ticketing platform, but they must be thinking, okay, yeah, I'm leading the market, and I will be
Yeah.
leading the market no matter what. But these companies, the problem with these companies is they've got so much confidence where they don't evolve.
Yeah.
They've stopped evolving. They just can't be bothered because they
If I can
know.
just add, yeah, no, sorry, if I can just add over here, it's like monopoly becomes too comfortable, way too comfortable.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is exactly what happened. And I thought to myself, I've got all the infrastructure, I've got the know-how, I know how to build this platform from scratch, and and this is not my first gig, and I will be doing a lot more concerts, and I've been speaking to a lot of friends in this business, uh, where they said to me the same thing. They said, "Look, we will be making concert. We don't have an appropriate platform to support you. The only platform that you have is these guys, and they're not good. And
Mm.
why don't we actually brainstorm instead of just creating a business? We actually create an experience, a
Right.
platform, a space for people who's got conference, seminar, concert, gigs, clubbing, or whatever. So you can actually do it comfortably online without having to go to shops because that company relies a lot on physical point of sales, which again, coming back to the point where what do you do? What do you do in situation where people can't travel to shops? Where's your online infrastructure? Ever since we've actually come online, you can see that there's been a huge competition on the market because we've been very competitive. We've been innovative. We've taken a whole different approach. I think I honestly believe I'm very humble about it, but I honestly believe that we have changed the trend of online ticketing platform in Mauritius. Thanks to us, I think, in a sense, you've had other companies being a bit more competitive, which is a good
Right.
thing. Have,
Yeah.
having competition on the market is really good because then you see innovation. And innovation is not just for my business, not for my goodwill, but also for the goodwill of the user, for the goodwill of people actually running events and concerts as per se. They have options. They have choices, and clearly they have a much better platform. Um, we've been growing since then, but unfortunately we had COVID since March 2020. So we've been since we launched until March 2020. I think we've hosted which is in the space of nearly a year. We're talking about just over a year. We've actually managed to host over 200 gigs on the platform.
Wow.
So that really straight away that tells you how much of a demand there is for this service.
Right.
How much people were not trusting the system before, how much people were
Yes.
not actually getting the service they required or they deserve, and it goes back to supporting people who's got, there's a lot of people who love doing events in Mauritius. I've got a lot of friends in this business. I've got a lot of people I know in this business, but they didn't have the platform to do so properly, and they had to. If they didn't, the only choice they had was if they didn't want to use the other company or my
Right.
competitor, I should say, they would actually have to print their ticket and sell themselves, which is a lot more challenging, right? And people look for convenience, right? So this is why we encourage by purchasing online, and we also believe that we can actually be part of saving the planet by not printing too many papers.
Of course.
Um, I think reducing footprint for us is very important as well, as much as being a business in Mauritius. Yeah, that's just to sum up about Ticketbox a little bit. But then we had COVID, like I said. After COVID, we always had the plan of expanding to selling hotels, and I think COVID has actually been sort of a blessing in disguise in that
Mm.
sense, where it's actually forced us to actually accelerate our pace into getting into the hotel industry sooner than we expected. So from a technical point of view, Ticketbox is the only booking engine in Mauritius. I can say that confidently. Is the only booking engine in Mauritius built from scratch, and it's built on a long-term tech stack. If people would know about what I'm talking about, it's an open book. You can go and have a look at Ticketbox. Um, but yeah, it's a start of a big thing, I think, from my point.
Definitely. And like from your entire like discourse right now, there's so much to unpack from what you just shared. But at the same time, like I just want to take some time and like really congratulate you and the team with everything that you've been up
Thank
to.
you.
Because honestly, because I really appreciate the kind of hard work and effort that go into such things. Because I think we're very quick to sort of think that, oh, business people are not do not do like as much as hard work. At least that's like a narrative that is sort of drilled from a system that tends to only give kudos to overly intellectualized industries. I personally don't like to have to say that myself, but the reality is that at times it can get to that point. And even with, like you saying that how like the tech stack is built in a way that is like really sustainable for the long term, that in itself is so visionary. And we've chatted about this before as well. And you mentioned about, like, and I, like, after I left that chat with you, I was like, this is what is called growth mindset. And that's definitely something that is almost sort of, I think we've both noticed it, lacking in a lot of business models in Mauritius. And I'm not really sure if that comes from a very Mauritian psyche. It's probably a cultural thing, because to be able to sustain an idea is not something that comes very naturally to the Mauritian social tapestry. And not just because of a lack of resources, and definitely, like, we shouldn't sort of like a shadow of that. A lack of resources is not such a big deal, but there is an actionability issue in Mauritius. Either because at times things are kept too exclusive to a particular set of people, or probably because of a lack of exposure, right? Like, you don't really have that kind of like a wing to really take your dreams ahead. Um, but exactly with regards to that growth mindset, right? And I want to sort of like spend a bit of more time on this one. Businesses in Mauritius, and probably let's talk a bit about the digital aspect of it, because we've both noticed that there is definitely a thirst for convenience, and a kind of convenience that is very digital, in terms of the market, right? In terms of the consumer demand. However, even COVID, even if COVID seemed to have sort of triggered that kind of like push towards businesses for them to kind of go online, after the first wave and after the second wave, there doesn't seem to have been a sustainability of those tools, right? Like, those tools were not kept. If anything, a lot of really big companies actually abandon the delivery services. They abandon their digital payment portal services, and I can just like keep listing the kind of things they abandon. Talk me through this. How is this disappointing? Why is this not healthy? How is this completely the opposite of a growth mindset?
So I think, like I said, people saw an opportunity during COVID, right? So not only obviously there's the aspect of helping each other, helping people during difficult time, which I applaud those people who's done that. Not only you put yourself at risk during those time, but you actually you came up with a solution to help the society. Again, I congratulate these people who's done that. However, they've actually short-sighted this business or this opportunity. They've only actually done it. What really saddened me is they saw an opportunity and they just basically short-sighted it. What happened after COVID? But then it's not entirely them to blame, to be fair. It's the consumer as well. So consumer actually, they actually profited to the convenience of a COVID. But then what happened after COVID is also consumer stopped purchasing online for the groceries.
Right.
Uh, and this is again my opinion. It's probably due to lack of entertainment in Mauritius. Is one aspect of it, not entirely, but one aspect. So imagine you've been home for a few
Right.
months, you haven't had the chance to go out. People are desperate to go out. And the means to go out is basically going to doing shopping malls, doing your groceries. It's the mean to go out in Mauritius, unfortunately. Whether people would believe or not, it is one of the trend. On a
It
Saturday,
is.
you go out for a meal. It's an opportunity to go out. But what happened is, would you then still purchase online? So what happened to this organization who started selling groceries online? And Mauritius being a very small island, you can go to any corner shop. You can go to any. I mean, shops are very accessible in Mauritius. Maybe a bit too accessible for these type of businesses to sustain.
Right.
And in order to sustain an online business, you need to get revenue, which goes back to why people don't use expensive tech stack to build those platforms, because they don't get the long-term revenue to sustain. That is a problem. And people who do actually have the opportunity to open up an online business like this, they just basically close themselves to the Mauritian market, because perhaps we don't have the means or the opportunity to go on to maybe expanding to different countries. It's very challenging. It's a lot more challenging for us than perhaps you see European countries. Somebody start a company in the UK. Next thing is they open in France or the nearby countries, where the market is pretty much the same. The consumption is similar. The consumer behaves, in a similar demand. But in Mauritius, we are, I think, a bit disconnected in that sense. And as a company, for a company to sustain, it needs a bit more, just I suppose, to just relying on 1.2 or 1.3 million consumers in Mauritius. Obviously, out of which are not all consumers. I mean, you have older generation, you have newer generation, you have underage children and everything, so who doesn't use or purchase online. So you'd probably be left with nearly half of that population to rely on. Is that enough to sustain an online
The
business in
model.
Mauritius? And out of which you need to basically go back to, I mean, I can keep going, but then out of which you rely on those people who actually prefer to go out than purchasing online for convenience. But then there's other aspect as well, where maybe somebody had a bad experience, or a bunch of people had bad experiences, and because social media is so powerful these days, they go, "Hey, I bought on X, didn't get a good experience." People are influenced very easily, so it's like, okay, so if you had a bad experience, I read that perhaps, I say, well, you know what? Why bother? I can just basically get my car out in 5 minutes. I go to ATM and come back in, an hour. Job done. As opposed to waiting for a delivery where maybe the delivery guy was not reliable. Not saying he was not, but as an example,
Right.
people tend to actually base themselves upon maybe fewer bad experiences than more good experiences. So it's a very small society. Word of mouth and the bouche à l'oreille. I think, as we say that in Creole, news travel faster than anything.
Yeah.
And all these put together may have had an impact on that market. As I say, may have had. So I haven't actually studied that market. This is my perception, and this is what I've actually been monitoring. But that's my conclusion, really.
Do you hence would we hence say that the phygital model, which is like physical and digital model in Mauritius, is a really hard one to crack? Are we ready yet for businesses to aspire towards at least having a digital presence?
Absolutely. I think Mauritius has all the infrastructure you need. Perhaps not the best, but you have the basic. I mean, you want to create a website for your business to support, to support your business. What you do, find yourself on Google. Google is present in Mauritius. You have, all the basic infrastructure required, but it goes beyond. It goes beyond this. Adaptation is actually people adapting fast enough to these trends in Mauritius. It is actually, are people more reliable or relying on tabloid print print materials than digital materials? how much time people spend on Facebook, and what is the impact of Facebook advertising, on the Mauritian consumer market? I mean, that's a question for perhaps for you, I'd say. I think it goes beyond this, and or basically all established companies preventing this from happening as they cannot evolve themselves, or they simply don't have the know-how. Um, like I've said, are consumers basically adapting to the quick pace of changes, or maybe perhaps it's too quick for the market? There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of thinking to do. Uh, but for me, I think it's all about confidence. If you think your business needs an online presence, do your market research, see how people react to it, and go about it, because metrics won't lie, right? So I base on most of my decision, I'd say, if not all, are based on metrics, business decision. I mean, um, it basically really helps you understand the sort of user you're dealing with. It helps you understand the consumer, your customers you're dealing with, and that will actually maybe help whether define whether Mauritius is adaptable or ready for the digital business model
Model.
in Mauritius. Um, but yeah, generally, I think we have enough infrastructure to get going, in my opinion. If people really wanted to, they have the means.
Yeah, and like like you're absolutely right in saying that in terms of the fact that we've got really good infrastructure. We've got one of the highest internet penetration rates, not just in Africa, but like at least in the southern hemisphere. I reckon we talked about one of the Facebook reports that came out a month ago that just talked about how people are a bit distrusting and are not very confident about making online payment transactions in Mauritius still. And there's a lack of education, and they admit to it that they're not very sure how to navigate the process or how to even kind of like be online. And you did have some thoughts to share around, like the payment models when it comes to digital transactions. You know, tell us a bit about that. Like, what are your thoughts? Where are we not, going in the right direction? Is there something in terms of policies that should be better adapted to it? What
Yeah.
is it?
Okay. So I think, where do I start on this point? Um, Payment gateways in Mauritius. Currently, you have means to pay by card, credit card or debit card, which I'll come to that again. You have the ability to pay with MCB dues, which is a wallet payment by MCB. And you have the means to pay via Mighty Money, which is also another wallet in Mauritius. People still pay using check as a mean of payment. And finally, the cash, pay cash, or uh, or people prefer to go to the bank and make a transfer to a business account, right? Now, why do we practice all these payments in Mauritius? As opposed to other countries, I'll take example in the UK because I'm based in the UK. We're talking about e-commerce, right? Because we're focusing on e-commerce and digital businesses here. You would find payment facilities like PayPal or debit credit card. These are the means that you'd usually pay. I don't think PayPal is very supported in Mauritius. I'm not sure if it is, or not sure. But people are really adapted to the MCB Juice wallet, which is a good thing, but not entirely a very good thing from a business point of view for us as
Tell us
a
about
as
it.
an end user. As an end user who's like someone paying to a business, it's convenient. You scan a QR or you just enter the phone number, blah blah blah. But the infrastructure that's been put together for this type of wallet is not entirely automated for businesses, and that really stopped the opportunities for businesses right there. In the sense of um, it's not automated, where somebody make a payment and the business can actually validate the payment without having any human interaction.
Right.
So the way it works now is X person is making a payment to a business. Let's say via Ticketbox, you can make a payment via MCB Juice, should you prefer. So you have instruction to how you make your payment after you've made your booking or whilst you're making your booking. So, you have step by step how we instruct you how to make the payment. There's either pay to a phone number or pay to a bank account, right?
Yep.
Which we are set up for. Or simply go on the list of businesses in Mauritius on the Juice app. Ticketbox will come up. So these are the free ways of paying to Ticketbox. So we receive a payment. So there's always somebody our end to basically double check if the payment was received and validate that booking. So this adds an extra step for us,
Right.
and not just a step, but also a delay to the customer, to the end customer who's actually waiting for a confirmation. Sometimes we have like 50, 100 bookings to deal with. You imagine if 50 people, 100, let's take an example, 50 people actually paid via MCB Juice, how much inconvenient that is to go and double check all the payments one by one and validate that booking one by one. I suppose to how it should work is somebody making a purchase for Ticketbox. You make your payment. There's an API that double check that payment automatically and validate that ticket or that booking, and that person instantly get their ticket if payment is true. I mean, true means it's received. If payment has not been received, then the booking doesn't go through further. So that actually removes the human aspect or the additional resource aspect. Having said this, this flow of payment, but if you pay by credit card or debit card. Now, going back to your original question, payment gateways in Mauritius, they are not they're not the most innovative in Mauritius, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Yes, we have the basic. It's automated.
Infrastructure.
It gives me the basic infrastructure to get going for a business as a business. But as a consumer in Mauritius, people who knows, there are two things. You can't. I mean, debit card is not very encouraged in Mauritius by banks to make online purchase. Now it's actually changing. But a lot of people, for example, I take example, this is experience that we have with our customers. People don't know if their card is activated to do
Yep.
online shopping. So you had to either do it through the app or call customer assistance or customer service to help you activate that debit card, which can take then for the 24 hours or so.
Yep.
So for me, this is an inconvenience. And if you as a consumer say, actually, I need to go and activate my card, I'd rather do it via MCB Juice. For
Yeah.
me, it's convenient,
As a
but for
customer.
the
Yeah.
business, it's not. For the business,
Yeah.
it's not. And yeah, I mean, there's not many gamers in Mauritius in terms of payment gateways enough for the market to be competitive yet.
Right.
That's also an issue. Like in the
It's
UK,
very
you have
yeah. No, please
Yeah, tell me.
continue.
No, no, go on.
Yeah, and I really appreciate, and enjoy how you say that competition is really something that is going to fuel that innovation that is actually sort of like missing, and that can really go to fuel that, right?
Hmm.
And it's a really good thing that you say, because even for me growing up, right, like I know Juice, for example, as a payment platform since I was a kid, and I'm like all grown up now. However, it's almost like it's sort of like taken its own, sweet time for even that as a platform to come into shape. And probably in a lot of ways, it's COVID-19 that pulsated that into, more recognition and existence. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, what's next? Is there going to be at least this kind of like financial literacy education finally somewhere for the consumer market? Or is the consumer going to educate themselves on their own? Or are they going to be like, are they going to wait to be activated? And I think at times in the Mauritian context, the latter is what's always waited for. It's almost like you always have to activate the consumer, and the consumer does not like take the responsibility to activate themselves. Um, and I guess this is where I kind of want to talk about the Mauritian consumer market. I remember we sort of like connected on this fact that the Mauritian consumer market is quite a tough nut to crack. As a
Hmm.
business person, as a marketeer, as just somebody who wants to kind of like do something with regards to like the growth potential of the island. Why do you personally feel it's such a tough market to crack?
Um, Firstly, I think people in Mauritius do not behave like behave in terms of as a consumer point from a
Yeah.
consumer point of view. They don't behave similarly to any other country. Uh, as a mere example, when you do concerts or when you sell tickets for an event, it's the exact opposite to the trend in Europe or in the UK. So when you launch a ticket for an event, people rush to go and buy, and they make sure that they get the best price, they get the best seat, they get the best view, they get the best offer. And this is why you do sometimes early birds offer and everything.
Hmm.
But in Mauritius, they don't make the most of all these things. And they prefer to buy the tickets really last minute. And you as an organizer who's doing an event, it's very challenging and stressful in the sense of you actually spending a lot of money to bring an artist to Mauritius or in whichever situation, but you have to wait for the last month or 2 3 weeks to make sure to know where you stand. You
Right.
know, I've done few concerts where you leave with a lot of stress until the last minute. That well, luckily, everything went well on various occasions, but it didn't go. Sometimes it didn't go right as well. So this is another experience, but you can't predict we early enough
Yeah.
with the consumer from the consumer. This is a huge issue for businesses. I think whether it comes for a ticketing company or whether for an event organizer or maybe other businesses as well actually experience the same thing in sort of entertainment because people tend to leave you know people tend to leave things last minute in the sense of based on the availability, I guess. I don't know what the reason is behind that. Maybe it's lack of infrastructure at the same time, or maybe it's just a trend, or maybe it's just a culture. It's just who we are as a
Hmm.
consumer. But people know whether. Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's just a weird thing to deal with. You bring them all the convenience, whether they're not interested in the artist. Um, that's fair enough. But leaving it last minute to buy really, really puts you up to the stress. Um, this is something that people are not changing, maybe. I don't know. I know big gigs, like, for example, there was like a DJ Snake who came in. it was in I think at the end of it, it got sold out, or it was they generated a good number of people turn out. But it was, I remember we were part of this project. I'm not going to comment entirely because it was not my project.
Hmm.
We were part of it. It was stressful in the sense of people left it last minute to buy, and it relied on a lot of marketing as well.
Yeah,
And my last concert I did was Udit Narayan. I don't know if you probably old enough to know this artist.
of course
Uh,
I know. I'm not that young, but okay.
all right. Okay. I'm just sorry, I'm just pulling your leg. Yeah, so that was the last concert that we did. In the end, it was a brilliant turnout, but it was very stressful until the last 2 weeks. Um, I've had a situation where I needed to cancel events as well before. So all these happen. What do you do? So leave it like last minute, or last 2 weeks to buy, and even whatever, no matter how much marketing you do, whether you increase it or whatever, it's just a trend for people to buy last minute. I think this really need a bit of a push, and this needs a bit of a change in the trend, I guess.
Like it's really interesting that you mentioned all of this because even for me, coming from a digital marketing background and having been around the world a bit, I guess even from a startup perspective, right? We have so much business literature around, like, oh, this case study in Japan, this case study in India, this case study, in China, or probably in Africa, or like somewhere in the American continent, and you're just like, how do you even fit a case study within a Mauritian context where the typical Mauritian behavior or consumer behaves in the most peculiar of ways? It's such a hard nut to crack, and you
Yeah,
definitely can never be sure about like what kind of like template you go by, what kind of business philosophy do you adopt and adapt, and even marketing, like you're saying, right? The kind of marketing tactic that works in foreign land does not necessarily kind of work successfully in Mauritius at all. And to me, I see this
absolutely.
as a challenge, and it kind of like invites me to want to crack that definitely. But when I start thinking about like a young entrepreneur sort of starting out and kind of like looking for that kind of wisdom, it's not an easy wisdom to have access to, right? It almost feels like in Mauritius when you kind of like entrepreneuring, it's a hit and miss, or it's probably a matter of like like the kind of network you're around, or knowing how you're going about in doing things. And you mentioned earlier how probably there is support, probably there's a lack of support. From the last time I was in Mauritius, they had a couple of incubators. Incubation hubs have become quite a popular scene in Mauritius. They've also been kind of like sponsored by the government, so it's not only like bound in the private sector anymore. Yet, it's not necessarily something that's still very accessible from an ownership perspective or from an initiator perspective to the average Mauritian, in the sense that the initiator is still somebody who's not Mauritian, or is probably Mauritian but part of a very selective social background. I want to know from you, did you experience any sort of barriers from a social background perspective in terms of you starting up in Mauritius? Um, and I know it's like a tough one to answer because it can go south very quickly, but whatever you want to share, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Well, you always have people or challenges, or whichever situation you like to put it, but you get the up and the lows and the downs, so I've had a lot of people who really discouraged me in going forward with this idea. A lot of couple of friends told me, look, I don't think it's going to work because, there's other companies who's a lot more established than you, who's been on the market for 15 years, and competing with them is going to be tough. I don't think, you'd be able to do it. And especially you don't live in the country. you live in the UK. How are you going to manage this? But for me, it's a challenge. You need to have the right mindset. Why are you doing this business? You know, yes, at the end of the day, everybody makes a business to get an earning out of it. That's the other aspect of it. But for me personally, I could choose to live my life in the UK without getting involved in anything in Mauritius. But I love my country too much, and I like to help people. I mean, this is me. I've been like this ever since. I was younger as well. So I've learned it from my parents, from my dad. I like helping people. So this is my way of helping the society, and it's something that I've experienced in Mauritius as well. And I think there was a lack of experience, and I just had to believe in what I'm doing. And at the same time, I also did my market research, whether this is something that people would require. But there was more people who said yes. Yes, we would like an alternative, as opposed to the only monopoly in Mauritius or something like this. Whilst a lot of people actually, put me down, but I've also had a lot of people who congratulated me for the step forward. You will find people who actually prefer to go with experienced companies, even if they're paying more, even the service is not up to the level, even so they're getting less value, you know, but they're going with the experienced one as opposed to the startup. So there's also that challenge in Mauritius where people don't trust less startups than more organized
An
or
established
more
MNC
settled
or
companies, established
yeah.
companies. This is a barrier. This is one of the barrier as well. I would consider it to be in Mauritius at the moment, but we are changing this.
You once mentioned that your team at the moment, they're all Mauritians, right? Um, and even in
Yeah.
terms of probably kind of getting Mauritians on board to be willing to work in a startup versus an MNC, there must have been challenges.
Yes. Not all my teams are Mauritian. So, Ticketbox is a Mauritian company, uh, but there are aspects of it which is not maintained in Mauritius, as in it's maintained either in UK or Mauritius. I basically manage half of the business here from a technical point of view and management point of view, and also marketing. But most our customer service, our sales team, uh, you know, the department that matters is in Mauritius. Only for the structure that we are, the structure we're set up for. And we also want to show that this structure works.
Right.
You don't have to be in Mauritius to run a business.
No.
This is the digital era. We want to prove that, and we want to encourage more people around the world. Mauritius is it's an evolving market, and there are big opportunities. Anyway, coming back to your question, yes, there's a lot of challenges in recruiting people in Mauritius. Um, Again, when it comes to startups, I think we've discussed that in the past. But there's all sort of thinking behind why they should work for startup again. It's the same. It goes back to the trend and culture, or what been you've been not educated, but what you've been um,
Brought up to think, socialized
brought up
into.
to think, or brainwashed to think. So these that you're safer in governmental jobs, or you're safer in established companies. It's not entirely true. COVID has proved us that most people who actually lost their job were from established companies. What have you got to say about this? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Um, and it's a challenge. And you know, as an example, many airlines, right? Established airlines. I mean, obviously, there's not many startups airlines, but in that field. But following what comes to airlines is bookings, booking companies or hotels, for example, right? They've had to let go a lot of people. This is something that we have to adapt, and it has changed the perception of who you work. But then but then there's also the sort of pride when you come from, you know, a big company to startup instead
And
of actually being, yeah.
yeah, and if I can even add over here, even if it means that you're probably earning way less with a big household name than you would probably in a startup.
Yeah, absolutely. Startup, there's a lot more challenge. I really enjoy working for startups. I've had the opportunity to work with a couple of startups in the UK, and it's an amazing experience. It's not the same experience you get in a blue chip company or big organizations. Um, you know, there's the aspect of climbing the ladder quicker. There's also the aspect of actually learning more, working directly with key people, stakeholders, as a matter. In a way, I hate working for big organization where you get diluted. You don't have, you know, you don't your existence almost doesn't make much difference.
It is not
For
impactful.
me, yeah, it's not impactful, but for me, my presence in a company, it needs to be impactful. It needs to be meaningful at the same time. That's what I look for. But then also I look for the same thing when I'm recruiting people in Mauritius. Challenging, and but then there's also the other aspect of the quality of application that you get is horrendous. I take the liberty of saying it's horrendous because it truly is. It's just on a level. This is something that really, really need to be addressed in Mauritius in terms of how do you structure or how do you you know, make an application to a company, no matter how small or big it is. You know, how do you send a CV? How do you send an email? You know, the funny thing, you know, I've been receiving in Seoul, it's just a level above, isn't it?
Forwarding the exact same
Um,
cover letters without a proper
well,
signature, and you can actually see the whole list of the people who've been CC'd across the whole board. And
no,
I
tell me
need to
all
agree
about
with
it.
you over here. No, I really have to agree as well, because even during my little hunt with my small project, right, when I was trying to kind of like get across the Mauritian, you know, people to sort of, oh, this is a Mauritian project. It would be great to have Mauritians around, and it was just so weird to see the application and the professional etiquettes. And that's not to criticize the whole bunch across the board or just to like put a swooping, same large brush across everybody. But there's definitely it definitely seems to have to call up in more thinking into the kind of professional grooming that actually happens from a very early age as well. And probably
Mhm.
here I'd like to kind of like have your opinion with regards to the lack of even looking for an internship culture in Mauritius. Like it's almost like you finish uni or you finish your A levels, and there is a particular section of students who would jump and like want to have an internship, but there's a majority who wouldn't. And even in a section who would look for an internship, they'd probably look for it in huge established MNCs. Um, and I kind of wonder what exactly are their learnings, in those enterprises,
Well,
especially because we know that graduate programs, as we know it in like different cities in the world, is not really existing in Mauritius. So I'll let you like tell us about that.
you know, COVID has been a learning curve for all of us. That's for sure. um, the reason why I'm starting this statement with COVID is we've had to readapt with how we work. our structure, and how we operate as a team. It's very crucial. And one other thing I said earlier is we are a business that operates, half in the UK and half in Mauritius, just to show you that anything is possible these days, and this is the trend. You don't have to be in one particular space, one office, for you to be able to operate a business. This is the blessing of digital assets, and that we are responding to. And one of the other thing that, whilst the world is adapting with working from home, I feel really stressed thinking about a response that I got from one of somebody who applied an internship recently, which to which I agreed to offer that person an internship. So I feel very stressed to universities in Mauritius who actually refused that application for from that student, because we operate mostly online. I was like,
Right.
I don't believe this. I just don't believe this.
Right.
This is the truth. And I said, well, whether it was made up or not, but the reason I said, I just being curious. I said, well, I did offer you, and it was a paid internship as well. So that person preferred to go to a company, office space in Mauritius. Obviously, it was a much bigger company. It was not my competitor. It was just like any company. That person just wanted to go to any company. They just needed to go to do an internship, as you probably know. So there are different aspects to why you
Yeah.
should do an internship. I think we need to educate people to why do you do an internship? What do you achieve out of it? I'll come back to this in a minute. But going back to this thinking culture of, if you're an online business, and especially if you're working from home, it's not going to benefit you. Well, whilst
Right.
the world is adapting, huge companies like Uber is adapting, huge companies like Booking.com is adapting, huge companies, Stripe, all the leading companies, Facebook, everybody is encouraging working from home. And in Mauritius, we are being educated that it's not going to actually benefit you working from home. Do not take an internship, or well, actually, the word that was used was, uh, if you take this internship, it's not going to count as an internship, and you're going to get discredited because it's the university requirement to get an internship done. Uh, it's not going to benefit you. I was like,
Wow.
I don't know. I was I was shocked hearing this. That educational institution in Mauritius are, maybe it's still a bit of taboo in that sense, to get out of their comfort zone, um, or adapting to the evolving market. But then, as an educational infrastructure or system, you're supposed to be forming your students right now. If you're putting this in their
The
mind that
future.
actually working from home is not going to benefit you, what is the future of that student? What is the mindset that you're creating? And I can tell you that some people working from home, people working in their own space, are sometimes a lot more productive, you know, and they work more,
For
if not
sure.
longer, sometimes, most of the time. They're more concentrated. Sometimes you work longer, which benefits the company. Uh, but there are all sorts. Um, why people should do internship in Mauritius, or why should people do internship, generally speaking? I think this is a subject that needs to be addressed. A lot of people actually do internship just for the sake of doing internship, with a sense of it's a requirement from university, whether they find the right internship or not. For example, you're studying accounting, but you do an internship in, I don't know, marketing. How's that going to benefit
Right.
you as a career change, maybe? That you've been doing the wrong thing. But this is the problem. There's not maybe there's not enough opportunities in Mauritius for internships as well. And the only few that offered internship are taken by, I don't know how many students there are in Mauritius. So that's also an issue. But if you're gonna put a barrier in the sense of do not take internships from an online company or a digital company, or who's
Or
operating
startup.
from home, or who's operating who's not, the startup wasn't so much a problem because I've had students before having internship, and it's been very helpful to them in the sense of you really give them the real world aspect of how it works, and this is what you actually supposed to get out of the internship. You get an overview of what's actually coming to you in the near future. How do you adapt to real world problems? Because when you work in university, as you probably know, you have situation which doesn't relate to the real world. Sometimes, everything is theory. Um, it's like a surgeon, for example. Well, now, well, I take that back. It's changing now. So they do practice on, making real surgeries and everything. But what I'm trying to say is, you need the real world experience as soon as you can to evolve in your, education, to evolve in your what in your subject you're learning. Um, it's a good thing that at least the very least they've done is making internships a must thing to do. But what they haven't actually focused is the details of how beneficial and what makes it beneficial. Yeah, that's.
For
I don't know
sure.
what's your
And I
experience on
feel,
this. It'll be good to know.
yeah, I 100% concur, because even with me, I had the same thing going on. I requested several universities to sort of, hey, on top of like it being a paid internship, I am currently working abroad. I'll be more than happy to coach a couple of students with regards to the kind of experience I've gotten, and I think that in itself is such a golden mine of opportunity. Like, I would beg to have somebody who's currently gotten global exposure to kind of like directly coach me, with what they've learned so far, right? And I would take up an opportunity like that in a heartbeat. And I also know that we've probably gone over time, and I do not want to sort of like steal more time from you. But if that's all okay, I'd like to end on a last question, and I'll let you sort of like wrap it up from there. Um, is Mauritius in need of external talent? And how important is it that that external talent um, is diverse?
Um, is Mauritius in need of external talents? External talents, as in Mauritian from abroad, or external? You mean investors or other companies that are
Everybody,
coming to establish?
yeah, that's exactly what I mean by the diverse part.
Yeah. Um, Yes, I think it's always a good thing to have experiences from abroad, isn't it? So it's always good to have other organization come and establish. Because look, if nobody is doing it whilst they're there, it creates an opportunity for another person.
Hmm.
And whether that another person or that another organization is from abroad, it's not probably not it's not so much relevant in that sense. It's all about an opportunity, who grabs it. Uh, Having an opportunity is not enough. Like I said, having the technical background, having the know-how of how to do, the know-how to do, to run, to organize, to sustain. this idea or the business concept, you know. So whether it need to come from an abroad infrastructure or not, I'm not sure. But I think Mauritius has enough infrastructure should you want to. But in my experience, uh, you need. I would encourage people to get out of the comfort zone. Uh, Going out of Mauritius for some time is good because you get to learn from others. You get to learn from different companies, get the experience, get the exposure. I think this is I think for me this is really crucial. Um, I don't know how I would have turned out if I never left Mauritius. But this is just talking about myself. But what I can tell you is the experience I've had over the years from UK. I've worked in with companies in the US, the different culture, the different adaptation. I've worked for big companies. I've worked for small companies. I've worked for startups. The amount of knowledge that you get shared, the amount of different level of people that you meet, the amount of things that you learn that you don't take into consideration about running a business is definitely influential. And whether actually this relies on people coming from abroad, yes, then I'd say yeah, it's not a must, but it's beneficial for anyone. Even if you don't have, you don't have to basically go out of Mauritius to learn, but you know, adapt yourself on other businesses that's successful, not just your country. Just don't bound yourself to something that is just within your comfort zone. Just go outside of it. Um, let's say you use a very simple solution you're trying to solve for. Let's say you're building a solution for you have a physical shop. You're trying to build a website to sell online. Simple e-commerce. But just don't bound or just don't basically follow what's actually been the trend in Mauritius. Just go out and be different and look up what other people are doing. Outside of Mauritius in the world. Talk to people. I mean, we have the online digital. We have the online digital accessibility. LinkedIn, connect with people, connect with societies, join other online webinars. There's just so many opportunities to how you can actually learn and adapt and bring those how we say in French connaissances into Mauritius. Um, so part of it, I would say 50-50, whether it needs to come from outside. Sometime that person who comes from the outside zone it's like it's like comment dire, étincelle,
The
right?
spark.
Leaving a spark. That's it. It's like a spark.
Yeah.
The person actually start something, and other people follow, other people learn. But it's also the other way around. There's a lot of intelligent people in Mauritius, of course. Needless to say, uh, there's a lot of good skills in Mauritius, whether you're educated or not educated. Skills are not measured by education. Uh, but I think it goes back to what we spoke earlier. Does the infrastructure allow you or encourage you to do so? Um, so yeah, that sums up, I think.
What have you been up to? If you want to just like introduce yourself finally.
Sure. So as you probably know my name now, Ajay, and I left Mauritius when I was around 20 after doing 2 years of University of Mauritius. Came to the UK to study. I did my bachelor degree and my master's degree in the UK. Um, I've I've never worked in Mauritius, but always worked in the UK with different exposure, different experience. I work mostly for tech companies. So this is basically my background, tech, and I have worked for different industries, including automotive, events, finance, um, um, and this is what I do for a living. So I create experiences for people. So I improve experiences for customers digitally, um, as a UI and UX designer. UI meaning user interface, UX means user experience. So I focus on bringing or improving or finding a solution based on metrics, like I said, how you can improve the market or how you can improve a product that can be more adaptable to the market. And this is what I'm trying to do with Ticketbox.mu as well. And I hope it becomes more successful and more supported by our fellow Mauritians. But from my point of view, Ticketbox.mu is your platform to go for, and it's an opportunity to have a better experience. Whether you're looking for a job, I would encourage you to work for our company. Whether you are looking to book a hotel, I would encourage you to book on Ticketbox, which is a whole new experience. It's the next level of digital booking and online booking, also, you know. But yeah, that's basically me. Thank you
Well,
very
thank you
much.
so much. Thank you so much, Ajay. It was like so good talking to you and just sort of encapsulating the essence of, what we discussed previously into this episode. I'm really hoping that people take away a lot from this one, especially, I guess, at this point in time, the audience is quite a young one. So hopefully it kind of like directs them in a way of thinking, or at least gets something started in them, towards everything that we are working towards.
Absolutely. I think you organizing these sessions is really valuable to the new generation to start with. A huge thank you and congratulations on doing so. This is very encouraging. This is encouraging to me and encouraging to all these youngsters as well that actually might be following. Uh, I must have I must have said a lot of negative things about Mauritius during this conversation, but I do apologize if I've offended anyone. But it's entirely the truth, and this is how this is a critique. Take it as a critique, maybe. This is how we evolve as the new generation. This is how we evolve as a society. This is how we evolve with as Mauritian, maybe going forward into digital, into going into a bit more digital era. So again, I think there's always an opportunity in Mauritius. I really encourage everyone and anyone in Mauritius to if you have an idea, don't let it go. There's always a way out. There's always a way to get something bigger. But you just have to believe and trust. Do your research. Do your market research, and always trust the metrics. Really, uh, assuming that you're doing correctly based on your marketing research. But yeah, there's a system in Mauritius. I think I would encourage more online, maybe online entrepreneurs to meet online and talk about the experiences. That would be a really good thing to get going in Mauritius. And I trust, I think you'll be the one who can do it at the moment. So since you're doing a great job,
Hi,
um,
thank you.
yeah, yeah, no, I think I know a lot of good people or skilled people in Mauritius, in and outside of Mauritius, who should join up on a conversation and share the experience because I can be biased on certain things, so we can hear what everybody's got to say, So that
Totally,
would be a
totally.
really interesting. That would be a really interesting conversation, and most of it, what we want to get out of it is to help others, right? So this is the new era of helping each other. Is the approach, and yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much again.
Yeah. Thank you for sort of, bringing this to attention because, like, even for us, right? And I think networking is so important, even if it's performed digitally. Just having that little bit of a trust and courage to send that one message, to connect with people, and just to have that, like that enthusiasm and like following up is like so important. And like, I guess 2 weeks ago, we didn't know each other, right? But again, like
No,
with the sharing of content, with exposure, and being a bit curious, there's so many connections that you can trigger eventually.
yeah, and the very last thing I'd really love to add is no matter the age gap, you always learn from somebody. And no matter what you're watching, whether you think this video is worthwhile or not, there's always something to take away. So, yeah, I think I should have said that at the beginning of this video, really. If you're watching this video, please do watch until the end because you will always learn something new. I mean, I learn something new every single day, even from I'll tell you, even from my 18-year-old daughter,
Yeah,
I learned how she behaves. I learned how to be a better dad. I learned how to tackle parenting. So there's always new things to learn. Trust me. So no matter the age group or the age gap, and again, what you're doing is a fantastic job. And no matter how experienced or all you are, or gender or whatever, you should always, be very receptive and encouraging. But yeah, that will be really my summary.